With a lot of easy complete quilt blocks, it's very simple to fold the sashes into position and stitch them in place. With a rectangle or square piece, it's a little trickier, and I'm going to show you the traditional way, and if you can do that successfully, great. And I have an alternative way that works a little better for me, so I'm going to share both with you now. Traditionally, what you do is you would be sewing or folding or somehow holding one sash in place. I'm going to call this sash the lower or bottom sash. Okay, and the reason I'm calling it that is because eventually another sash is going to sit on top of it at the corner, and I'll consider that the upper sash. Once you've folded that, you fold the raw edge of the corner of the upper sash. I'm going to turn off the camera and pin this in place. So I've pinned my upper sash so that you can see right here is the fold that I folded. Now I'm going to hold my lower sash in place and flip my upper sash. I'm just going to temporarily hold it in place with a pin. And I'm going to zoom in on this area right here. This is where I sometimes have problems creating a folded corner using this method. So see this fabric? I have to figure out how to tuck it in. Where does it go? So I've come up with another solution, and I'm going to share that with you now. This is how I usually fold these edges, and I eliminate that little teeny extra fabric that happens in the bottom doing this method. This is going to be my bottom, and this is going to be my top. The first thing I do is I fold my top, getting rid of that raw edge. I'm going to turn off the camera and pin this fold in place so my fingers get out of the way. So I turned off the camera and darkened what would be the stitching line or the fold line, depending on what you were doing. So that's the line that you drew from dot to dot when you were marking the Easy Complete quilt blocks. So the next step I do is I hold my fabric where it meets the stitching line. I hold that fold in place with either my finger or a stiletto, and then I flip the lower sash into position. I'm going to get my fingers out of the way and pin that. Once I've folded my material up, because I held the fabric in place there, you'll notice that I've created a raw edge right here and a folded edge right here, and I can even tuck it in using a ball tool to make it go in a little more. But this edge is finished because there's a fold in it. Then what I do is I flip the top into position and create my corner, and that way I don't have that little extra fabric down at the tip uncontrolled and in my way. So I'm going to zoom in on that, and you can see if I need to pull a little fabric out, I usually use a little ball on a tool that's called a paint dropping tool, and I tease the fabric out that way. If I need to push it into position, I carefully use my stiletto to guide the fabric into a better position. Now, all this is happening on the sewing machine while I sew. What I'll do is I'll start sewing up here and these black lines represent my stitching, and I hope my stitching is going to be a little neater than this. I'll usually stop here about 1 to 2 inches away from my corner, do all those maneuvers, and then sew down to the corner, and right at the intersection of the two sashes, I'll plant my sewing machine needle right here, lift up my presser foot, and examine this fold line. If it's not as good as I want, I'll take my little tools and maneuver it into position. If it looks good, what I'll do is I'll stitch down, and then I will back stitch. That is the way I have found I don't get any sort of problem with extra fabric down here, or not having any support and having my presser foot kind of roll in a funny position. So I back stitch. So down, I go down, and then I back stitch, pivot my sewing machine, and continue sewing towards the next corner.